Hello, everyone. Welcome to Igniting Change, Finding Your Fire. This is a weekly podcast with me. I am Meena Puri. I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner and a spiritual teacher. Today, I have a very special guest with me. His name is Dr. Saul. He is a pediatrician, but that is not just his profession. It is also his passion. Children are his passion. So, Dr. Soul, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Uh,
My pleasure to be here.
so nice to have you. I just, read through your website and the book that we will be talking about that you just recently created. I am so thrilled to have you. I think this is such a wonderful work that you are doing with the world changing in such a rapid way. We are confused about everything. We're confused about how to parent our children. We're confused about how to deal with the young adults because we ourselves are trying to find a place where we can land feeling safe and secure. So, Dr. Saul, one more time, welcome to the show. Would you go ahead and tell our audience a little bit about you?
Yeah, I finished my medical training in 1979 in pediatrics, and but also got training as a medical geneticist. So I'm both a pediatrician and medical geneticist. But I got on this current journey that you alluded to really in the early 90s, 1990s. Had been in practice for about 14 years, and I was determined to be the best darn doctor you could be, but I felt like I wasn't paying back to the community. So I went to a talk and unexpectedly heard 12 words that have had a profound impact on me ever since. For anything that happens in the community, I am the problem, I am the solution, I am the resource, which means that I need to take personal ownership in the issues in my community. I need to be part of the solution, but to do that, I need to devote my resources to it. Um, I heard those, but it really took a couple months for me to internalize the message. What do I do? How do I use this information?
Hmm.
Then I finally went to the folks in the community and said, put me in, coach. I'm ready. I'm ready to do some good. And I felt like I was doing something and involved in a variety of community activities. And then April 20th, 1999, two teenagers walk into a high school in Littleton, Colorado, massacre 13 people and kill themselves. You and
Oh,
I know that as Columbine. And that was the second sort of, wow, could that happen in my community? And yes, it could. What have I done to make a difference? And the answer was not enough. So I sort of recommitted myself to trying to look at something. And to make a long story short, I found myself on a 12, 13-year journey trying to articulate what I thought could make a difference. I wrote down at the time what I considered to be the 5 steps to community improvement. And over the next 12, 13 years, wrote over 160 op-ed articles for the local newspaper
my
about what
goodness.
each of us could do to make a difference in our community. And turn that into my first book, My Children's Children, Raising Young Citizens in the Age of Columbine. But those 5 steps have sort of been the tipping or the stepping off point for the other book that we were going to talk about, Conscious Parenting.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be glad to talk about the 5 steps if you'd like me to.
Just listening to you, I am learning about you as we are having this conversation to take on this endeavor of impacting the community and to going deep into, your focus on the children, because how our future communities are dependent on our children. And with the whole violence in the schools, the gun issues, never mind what's happening with COVID, our kids really don't have a place to land. They really, the ground has been pulled from underneath them, I think even more so than the adults, because they simply have not developed the skills, or that is not what they were anticipating that their life would be, especially when they're coming from, a consistent, a stability, and then all of a sudden these gun issues and the safety issues erupt in schools. How do you bring the kids back to safety, back to their center? So I am just in awe that you took it upon yourself and you saw deep into the issues of the community. And I think so much, all of us need to do that. You mentioned something how I am the problem, I'm the resource, I'm the solution. And we have no solutions outside. There's no outside governing body that is providing the solutions to us. We have no leaders, truly. We have to be our own leaders, and we are the leaders. So I really applaud you and so grateful for people like you that you came forward and that you are devoting your time in this type of work. I had no idea prior to coming to meet with you. So, since you mentioned the 5 steps, what are the 5 steps?
Well, I mean, everyone could come up with their own 5 steps, but I like mine.
Yeah.
The first, number one is, and I chose these words carefully, learn to be the best parent you can be. Parenting is a lifelong learning experience.
Mm-hmm.
You never stop. And even when you think you have grown children and you're out of it, you don't stop, because sometimes we are parenting our adults, our parents, as they get
Yeah.
more old and have all sorts of problems. To be the best parent you can be, not everyone has the same set of circumstances
Mm-hmm.
based on intellectual ability, based on socioeconomic circumstances, based on emotional health, based on a variety of things. People have different circumstances. And my job was to help them be the best parent they could be. Early on in my career, I felt like my job was to sort of tell people come to the pediatrician, tell me what I should do, doc. So I felt like my job was to tell them. Well, I now know, even though I'm retired, I now know my job was to enable them, to empower them,
To
and
empower them.
in many ways, gently peek behind the curtain, analyze the situation, and help them over a period of time in a trusting relationship, help them to the best of my ability. So learn to be the best parent you could be. Number 2 is get involved. You have to get involved in your community. And there's so many different ways, whether that's running a bowling league or whether that's running the food kitchen. There's so many different ways to get involved. It's important to get involved. Number 3 is related, but I think it's different. Stay involved.
Stay
Sometimes it's
involved.
easy
Yeah.
to get involved, but sustaining the involvement in some way, shape, or form can be a challenge. Number 4 is the most intuitive, but we don't do very well with it in today's society.
I
Love for
know.
others. And that, because in this divisive society where we're sort of yelling at and yelling past each other, we don't do that very well. And number 5, I think, is the toughest: forgiveness. And in the words of Maury Schwartz in the little book from Tuesdays with Maury, forgive yourself first, forgive others, and do it now. So those were the 5 steps, and those were all the articles that I wrote. That was the sort of the tipping point that has kept me going now on this almost 30-year journey.
Oh my goodness. You speak my language. You mentioned a few things. There is no one situation is similar to the next. So when parents are looking for advice, I have a child myself, not still a child, 25-year-old, but I'm still parenting him, and you have no idea. Okay. And there's so many parents, they're looking for like a cookie cutter process of raising children. There isn't one. I have many moms that I work with, and children are their issues. And I'm like, if somebody's telling you, here are these 5 things to you, that's a BS. You really have to look at your own unique situation, the needs of your child. Nobody knows best about your child than you do. And you have to listen to that. In our society, we get so much into the comparison, especially as parents, about our children. And like you said, parents are carrying on with their wounds that they haven't healed. So they are hoping that the children are going to, heal the wounds or fill the gap where where their needs were not met. And it is such an important thing for the parents to first really complete themselves, heal themselves. So not to think of their kids as an extension of themselves who are there to fulfill their dreams, rather these individuals who come through them, but they don't belong to them. And so, more than the children is the parents who need the education. And many times I have parents and children, mom would say the child is doing this, da 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 da. So that what happens, the parents actually end up working with me, because I say, you are half, if not more, of part of the equation. You do your work, your child will take the lead. Model, don't criticize. And so that's one thing that you said. It's just so powerful. And you said something, the last, what was your 5th point?
About forgiveness.
Oh, forgiveness. Oh my goodness, that is huge. And how did we, and before coming to the podcast, usually my podcasts are on Thursday, and I thought, oh, I should have done it on Thursday. Now I know why it had to happen today. I talk about forgiveness, and I always say the only person you need to forgive is yourself. Forgiving others is not yours to do. It wasn't about you. It wasn't to you. We don't want to be the judge and jury of anybody. Nobody is in that place. Nobody is in that place to forgive another human being, but you are in a place to forgive yourself. That's really where it is at. That is so powerful. So can you repeat in summary the 5 points again for our audience so they can really hear it?
Number 1, learn to be the best parent you could be.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, get involved. Number 3, stay involved. Number 4, love for others. And number 5, forgiveness.
My goodness, just these 5 points, remembering these 5 points can cut so many of our problems.
And the whole point about forgiveness, and I've, this 30-year journey I've been on, I have learned as much as anybody else. Mm-hmm. But, when your 4-year-old whacks your 2-year-old and you say, tell him you're sorry, I'm sorry. I mean, you're looking at a different kind of forgiveness than when a 14-year-old, a 24-year-old, 34-year-old. So hopefully we're evolving, we're learning, because I think a lot of this, no matter what faith you are of, or mm-hmm. even faithless, forgiveness is the vital feature in humankind as we go forward.
Really, it's really self-forgiveness. And it's not a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old saying sorry to one another is quite different than a 13-year-old going into a school and shooting kids. Sorry is just not going to do, because there's something somewhere along the line, something has gone wrong. Right. So, wow. So thank you so much for sharing that. That's powerful. So now I would love to talk to you about your book that you just recently wrote.
Well, I'll give you a little background for that. Sure. Late in my career, when I made a career change, I had to take another leadership course, and I thought I'd had as many as I needed in my lifetime, but I had to do it. And of course, I'm better for it. Yeah. And what they talked about, and I'm simplifying, is this principle of conscious leadership, that and they talk about a fictional line, when you're above the line, you're open, you're receptive, you're ready to learn. When you're below the line, you're closed, you're defensive, and you're always right. And the whole point about conscious leadership is just to be conscious of where you are. Yeah. I mean, we've all been in that 3:00 meeting and we're rolling our eyes saying, oh, I can't, when is this thing going to be over? I am so bored. I've got so many other things to do.
Yeah.
And if you're conscious that you're below the line, then that's okay. You can choose to stay there if need be, given the circumstances, or you can say, oh, I need to change my interaction. I need to be more attentive. So I need to try to be more above the line. The same principle holds for parenting. And I came up with this construct called the parental awareness threshold. When you're above the parental awareness threshold, you're open, you're receptive, you're ready to learn, you're engaged with your children. When you're below, you're closed, you're defensive, because I said so, because I'm the parent. And we've all been above and below that all the time. And sometimes minute to minute. And
Yeah.
because we're
Yeah.
human,
Absolutely. Yeah.
that's part of what we do. And so the whole point about conscious parenting is just a conscious awareness of where you are in that relationship. And it involves both. It involves the Diane. The parent sort of needs to understand where they are and how they're interacting and try to get a feel for their situation. But they need to understand where the child is. And a lot of that is understanding the developmental nature of a
Yeah.
child.
Mhm.
That a 2-year-old is going to process information very differently than an 8-year-old, than a 16-year-old. So you have to sort of know. And the other thing is knowing that each circumstance, like you were talking about, everyone's unique. Each interaction is unique. The same set of circumstances might present on a Monday morning, and you might react very differently than you did the same set of circumstances on a Friday morning, because of the situation, because of the external factors that are out there in terms of, you've got to get here, there, and wherever, something your spouse or somebody else said because of a family situation, or just because of your emotional setting at the time. And then knowing how to do that for the child. So this conscious parenting paradigm that I talk about, excuse me, is that I think the whole point of parenting is a conscious awareness of where you are. And I will sort of jump to the end in saying, to me, the whole point of parenting, and I'm simplifying for dramatic purposes, is raising your children to be good citizens.
Yeah.
Good citizens care for each other. Good citizens
Mhm.
care about each other.
Mhm.
Good citizens care for each other.
Each other.
And a lot of folks, and when my parents divorced, my mother said, all I want you to do is be happy, Bob. I just want you to be happy. Fortunately for me, I did not pursue just a path of pure happiness in terms of doing what I wanted to do. Fortunately for me, my mother set the right example. And I think the example for me was being able to care for each other and care about and give back to others, as what has led to my sort of more internal happiness than excited that I got those presents for Christmas, or a new Wi-Fi or whatever.
Yeah, that's the that seems to be the current model, or was the current model that is shifting. Is, let's see how much we can provide for our children, because the children that we are raising today, the parents are coming from a place of scarcity where their parents were not able to give all to them. So they're making up for it by overdoing, by overcompensating. And that backfires. That backfires with the children always expecting, or they really don't get to know their own value. They don't really get to reach into and be more than just the one who's receiving the gifts. So, and you talked about, conscious parenting is not any different from conscious living. And that's really where it is at. That's really where the work is, to cultivate this moment to moment awareness of your children, and noticing how much of you, or how much of that unresolved or the unhealed part of you is infusing with theirs, is infusing with their freedom, with their individuality. So you're not really able to see. I have many moms who say, well, my 20-year-old, they're so self-centered. They never say, Mom, I want to spend time with you. They just want money or whatever. So this is what I said to her. And I said, their brain is not completely developed. At that age, it's still not a two-way street. I don't know with children if it ever becomes a two-way equal street, where I do this for you, you do that for me, because no matter what, you always remain the parent. You always remain the parent, no matter how old you are. I have an 80-year-old sister, and I tell you, if she has conflict with her 50-year-old children, and she asked me, and I said, you are the parent. Do what you need to do. Do not equalize. Do not say they have to do the same, because you are the parent. So if that means you're screwed, then you're screwed, right? Then that's the fact of life. So, and I said, between 20 and 30, when you potty train a 2-year-old, you don't tell them in one day you're potty trained. You give them a couple of years. And even then, they have accidents. So a 20-year-old is a person who is trying to leave childhood and enter adulthood. And especially in this world, it's a confusing place. It's a confusing time. And I said, give them that time to grow. Leave lots of room open for errors, and just be there. It's not a two-way street. Stop expecting that. Maybe above 30, if you're lucky, they'll tell you how much they appreciate you, but don't expect that now. And that's where we get into, and I think we get into that because of our, I don't know if it's conditioning or if it's just, living in fantasy land, or we see some families, in, the kids interacting that way. And we want that kind of a cookie cutter dream where all the families gather around the holidays and everybody's getting along. And I'm like, please remember, that's the picture. That's maybe the reality for a handful few. But for most of us, that's not the reality. Parenting is gritty and gruely, and it's awful, and it's wonderful. It's messy, it's heartwarming, it's heart-wrenching, it's heartbreaking at the same time. Just because you got it today doesn't mean it's going to be the same tomorrow. So it's really, I'm thinking, what a big, almost an impossible task to make a human. First, to create it in your body for women, and then to allow the space and create the conditions to give him the best there is available, so he or she, the child, can form or become into the best version of themselves. This is no easy task. And in order to do that, it's really the parents who need to do their own work. They need to know how to be aware. They need to know how to be conscious. They need to become, there's a lot of healing work needed for the parents, because we carry our wounds from 20s into our 30s, into becoming a mom, into becoming a grandma and whatnot. And many of us leave this planet with the grievances, with the trauma. We live our entire life with that. And it doesn't matter how much you give to your children. It doesn't matter how much you love your children, but those wounds, those wounds get inherited. Your way of being, if it's a wounded way of being, it's going to pass on to your children. Your children are watching you more than they're listening to your words. They're picking up. They're in your energy. They're in your vibration. They're picking that up more than what you say, more than what you think it's in their head. So, wow, what a work that you're doing. So, at this point, are you counseling parents, children? Are you directly involved with schools?
Well, I I retired the end of 2020
Okay.
after over 40-year career. And right now I'm writing, trying to keep up my regular blog. And I'm the president of the South Carolina chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. So my focus is a little different. in terms of advocating more than direct interventions at this point. Um, let me add on to what you were talking about, because there's a famous storyteller who has been somewhat um, put aside because of some past problems, but Garrison Keillor, in one of his episodes where he talks about this fictional town in Minnesota, the family has a child that they went down to Texas, and he called them their spasm child, and spasm stood for simply pray and send money. So it was,
And I'm like, wow.
I just love that. That's always been in the back of my
Yeah,
mind.
yeah.
Um, but so, I mean, so one of the big things from the conscious parenting also is, for anything that's happened, whether it's in the moment when you're having an issue with a behavioral issue, or in retrospect, pause, assess, and choose.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, again, that's not unique to parenting. That certainly is what we should be doing, and we're going to make the wrong choices at times.
Yeah,
Uh,
we
and
are.
so
Yeah.
uh, that's okay, so long as we are willing, either in the moment or in retrospect, to seriously assess where we are. I remember one night my son was 7 or 8. My youngest son was 7 or 8, and he said something that really upset me, and I yelled at him, and he just turned into a puddle. And my wife got mad at me for yelling. So we went into that family meltdown mode where nobody talks. Everyone just walks by each other
Yeah.
for a couple hours. I'm sure that never happened in your family, but uh, it did.
Yeah.
And then it was time to lay down at bedtime and just to read a story or whatever.
Hmm.
And I said, "Son, I'm so sorry. I think you did something wrong, but my response was totally inappropriate, and I want to apologize. I'm sorry for what I did and how I reacted. Um, and we're in this together, and I want you to know that I'm here." And he said, "Dad, would you be quiet?" I said, "Why?" He said, "I hate it when you're nice." So I think I was practicing this conscious parenting back then, even before I had
Even
come up
before
with
you
this,
knew. Yeah.
with the specific paradigm. So, uh, and the book I wrote is purposely short because it's meant to be a paradigm. It's meant to be a crude map, like you said. If anybody that picks up a book and expects to how to this or how to that
No, no.
has a very naive uh, sense of what's happening, and you
Hmm.
can't pick up my book and say, "Oh, this is, you know, I just had a blow up of my child. How do I do? What do I do?" I mean, that's something you have to learn over time. So the book is very short,
Very thin.
and it's meant to be come back to as you need to think about how to what are the skills I need to be a good parent. How
Hmm.
can I sort of change my behaviors, and how can I be sure understand what the child's behaviors are to go forward with this. And the other thing I'd like to add to the parenting thing, and I'm sure you deal with this all the time, is the whole issue of discipline versus punishment.
Oh
Um,
my gosh. Yeah.
Discipline, I mean, any behavioral issue that a family is dealing with, they should be thinking in terms of discipline, and they should be thinking discipline, remembering the root word for discipline is disciple, which means to teach. So
Mhm.
any behavioral issue needs to be a teaching experience, not a punishment.
Not a punishment. Well, what we do in our modern world is discipline is, I'm going to take your cell phone away. The kid just pushes, they just live through the agony of not having a cell phone or having other digital toy. And when they get it, they're over it because, then the parent is worried about, oh my God, he snuck it out of my bedroom. Then you're chasing it. It's like, this is not working, right? This is not working. So it's really simply because we don't know. We don't know how to teach the kids consequences. We don't know how to discipline. We think discipline is like, it's got to be something harsh. It has to be something severe. I don't think today's kids respond to that. And one thing that you mentioned about your good intentions, you're going to make mistakes because, there is no book on parenting. There cannot be a book on parenting because every situation is unique. And I remember when my son was in high school, boy, those were like, if I had, that was my one and only child. If I have another child, it would be all so different because so much of what he went through, he totally caught me off guard. I had no idea what the heck to do. And I'm still thinking he's my 10-year-old baby boy who's just telling me a million times a day, Mom, I love you, Mom, I love you. And this turned into this 16-year-old monster that I'm like, oh my God. His voice was loud, and I felt like when he talked, I felt like he was throwing stones in my head. And I actually would cry after he would leave. And the next morning I would sit down and talk to him. But like it was very difficult. So he would say, Mom, you did this and this happened, that happened. You should have done this. You didn't know this. And then I finally came up with an answer. I go, you know what, honey? I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not the predictor of future. All I have is my good intentions, love, and my instincts to protect you. You have me chasing my tail all the time because the minute I come up with something, you go do something else. And I'm always putting out fires. So I said, I can only do the best I know to do. You have to remember my intention is my utmost love for you. But I don't know how this is going to turn out what I did. So I said, I don't have a crystal ball. And in life, you're never going to find one. All you really have is your good intention. I'm like, thank God I have an answer for that because he drove me nuts. Mom, you're not, he goes, Mom, you're not stable. He called me stable. I am the yoga teacher extraordinaire, the healer of the community. He tells me I'm not stable because I would change from one day to the next because he would keep on changing. Because whatever I would do, it didn't work. It didn't seem to have any meaning. I just laughed. I go, you know what, honey? That's all I got. All I know is love you. And I'm always trying to figure out how to do all of that. I said, I don't have a crystal ball. So there. That ended the conversation. But yeah, good intentions, awareness, and three things for me. I think good intentions, awareness, and healing your past yourself. So we see our kids as separate individuals from us. And I think that will go a long way in framing or in creating the citizens of tomorrow. But there are always situations where we cannot control everything. I have parents who are like, I don't know what happened to my child. I don't know what I did. I did so much. I did all of this, and this is how they turned out. And, certain things we cannot predict. Not everything is in our control because kids do bring their own past, in my work, in past energies to be healed. They bring their own imprints into their life, their own soul imprints that they have to deal with. But those are more exceptions than rules. I think, the nurture providing examples can go a long way.
The excuse me, the book that I co-authored that was published by the American Academy of Pediatrics looks at the early biology looks at what we call the eco-biodevelopmental model, ecology, biology, and developmental stages that are in early childhood. And there's so many children that are exposed to such significant trauma, unfortunately, in our society. And we do know that folks that have the early exposure are much more likely to have significant health problems when they get into their adult years. But the good news is, even though we have now documented some biologic changes and some neuronal changes and even some what we call genetic changes, it's never totally fixed. That is, and what appears to be relational health is so important. And what we call, very fairly ubiquitous in our society is what are called SSRIs, which are antidepressant medication.
Yeah.
The important thing that we all need are what are called SSNRs, safe, stable, nurturing relationships.
Yes, it is.
And those,
Yeah.
I mean, for some of the families that I've dealt with in my career, sometimes that won't be the parents. Sometimes that might be the aunt. Sometimes that might be the grandmother. But our abilities to help them to get into and understand and enable their safe, stable, nurturing relationship can make the world of difference going forward. So that's the other important thing is trying to see what we can do, understanding that a lot of behaviors are sort of, I won't say ingrained in early childhood development,
Mhm.
but we do know that sometimes people that are more like people that have had adverse childhood experiences, what we call ACEs, are more likely to have problems with hypertension, diabetes, uh,
Absolutely. Yeah.
promiscuity, drug problems. So if we see that in their teen years, we can just throw up our arms and say, "Well, that's just the way it was," or
Mhm.
we can dig our heels in and try to do what's best. But you never, like you said, you're not going to make the change in a day. You're not going
No.
to make the change in a week, a month, maybe years, until people finally realize when they get into their 30s that how smart their parents were, or finally understand the situation. And because it's life is tough, like you said, you went through a whole dichotomy. Life is great, life is tough, life is
Yeah.
life is crappy, life is beautiful, and all of those things. And my job as a physician was to help people around that, to help set up a paradigm. Parenting is not an innate ability in today's society. I'm not sure it ever
Mhm.
was, but it certainly isn't in today's society because we're so interdependent on
Yeah.
each other. It's
Mhm.
not like we can go out of our cave and kill something and bring it back and eat it.
Right.
Now we have to get in our car. We need to make sure our car works and all these other things. So just everything is dependent on everybody else
Yeah.
these days. So
Yeah.
those 12 words, I am the problem, I am the solution, I am the resource. Let's change the pronoun. We are the problem. We are the
Yeah.
solution. We are the resource.
I love that. I love that. We are the problem. We are the resource. We are the solutions. So thank you. Thank you so much. You have shared so much wisdom here. You have shared so much here, and I hope that people who are listening, um, they will listen to it deeply. And so, again, conscious parenting is not about protecting your children from life, from world. You can't do that. It's giving them the strength, the vitality, the tools, the intelligence, the creativity, the support, so they can do it themselves. They can make good decisions when life is tough. So, Dr. Saul, if people wanted to get a, look at deeply more at your work, I know you don't do individual consults, or maybe they can take a look at your book. How can they contact you?
My website is mychildren'schildren.com. Um, and that has the books, has my blog, has contact page if they want to contact me. And I purposely chose my children's children for three reasons. One, if I was writing for my grandchildren. At the time I wrote, I didn't have any grandchildren, but now I have two,
Mhm.
so I'm so excited. My children's children, second, is all the children that I've cared for, the thousands of children that I've cared for over the years.
Yeah.
And my children's children, three, is all the children that I've advocated on behalf of. So, but pediatricians are very paternalistic or maternalistic. We see the children that are in our care as our children, and we want to do everything we can to help them and help the families.
How lovely is that? I love that how your website is. It just speaks volumes by itself. So I want to thank you for your time, for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for coming on the show. So thank you so much, everyone, for watching, and stay tuned. We will look forward to joining you next week. Thank you so much.